Everyone thought I skipped my twin brother's wedding out of jealousy or pride, but the truth is they didn't want me there. They were afraid I'd reveal a secret, something deeply personal, carefully hidden that would change everything people thought they knew about my family. And the most shocking part, my mother was the one behind it all. My name is Eli Bennett. I'm 27 and I live in a small but cozy apartment in Portland, Oregon. It's nothing glamorous, an old brick building with creaky stairs, uneven hardwood floors, and a fire escape I sometimes sit on when the thoughts in my head are louder than I'd like. I'm a freelance graphic designer, which means I mostly work in silence alone with nothing but the sound of the city below and my own memories playing louder than Spotify ever could. I wasn't always alone. Growing up, there was Theo, my twin brother. Born just 5 minutes apart, Theo was everything I wasn't: athletic, charming, effortlessly social. He was the kind of person people gravitated toward at parties. I was the kid in the corner doodling in a sketchbook or asking teachers for extra reading. But we were inseparable, not out of obligation, but because we chose to be. Theo had his crowd, I had my quiet, but when it came down to it, we always found our way back to each other. I remember summer nights playing flashlight tag in the backyard. Both of us sweaty, scraped, and laughing until our sides hurt. I remember making up secret codes, sneaking snacks into our room, pretending we were spies or pirates or astronauts. When our parents fought, because all parents do, Theo would always look at me and say, "You and me okay no matter what." And I believed him. For a long time, that was enough. Then college happened. He stayed in Arizona. I left for Portland. I didn't expect everything to stay the same. We had our own lives, new friends, different cities, but I thought the important stuff would survive. And for a while it did. We still FaceTimed often. I flew home for birthdays, holidays, random long weekends. I was there when he landed his first job. He called me when I had my first big freelance contract. We didn't talk every day, but when we did, it felt like no time had passed. Until slowly it started to change. The calls came less often. The check-ins turned into emojis. I'd find out about family news through our sister's Instagram before I ever heard it from him. When I'd text him about visiting, the answers were always, "Let me check," or "Things are kinda hectic right now." And then came the post. A photo popped up on my feed one morning, Theo on one knee holding a ring. His girlfriend Isla beaming with a hand over her mouth. The caption, "She said yes. Can't wait to spend forever with you, Isla." I stared at it for a full minute. No call, no heads up, just an Instagram post like I was just another follower. I texted him immediately, "Congrats, man, so happy for you." And I meant it. I still believed we were okay. He replied an hour later, "Thanks, bro. We're thinking of having a small engagement party in a couple months. We'll let you know when we lock the date." But he never did. And that was when I felt it for the first time. Not anger, not hurt, not yet. Just this quiet, disorienting loneliness. Like walking through your childhood home and realizing none of the furniture is where it used to be. Something had shifted. I just didn't know how much yet. I waited. Days turned into weeks and still nothing. No text, no call, not even a passing mention. I wasn't asking for a parade or some grand gesture, just the date, the time, a reason to book a flight, something to make me feel included. I brought it up casually the next time I spoke to our mom. Her voice was cheery like always. "Any plans yet for the engagement party?" I asked, my tone light, careful. She paused just for a beat too long. "Oh, it's still up in the air, honey. They're figuring things out. You know how young people are these days, everything last minute." Young people. I was younger than Theo by 5 minutes. When I texted Theo directly, it was the same story. "Nothing locked in yet. I'll keep you posted." But he never kept me posted. Eventually, I stopped asking. You can only pretend not to notice so many times before the pretending starts to hurt more than the truth. Then on a Thursday afternoon it happened. I was scrolling through Instagram, mindless, half distracted, when I tapped on a story by a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. The video was grainy, probably taken from across the room, but I recognized the restaurant. I recognized the dress Isla wore. I recognized the people. There were at least 70, maybe 80 guests. Laughter, speeches, clinking glasses, fairy lights strung across a rooftop, a sign behind the bar that read Theo and Isla, forever starts now. I watched it 3 times before it sank in. I hadn't just been forgotten. I had been erased. I checked my texts. Nothing. My email, empty. Not even a forwarded invite, a last minute "we'd love for you to come." The story disappeared after 24 hours, but the feeling didn't. They had a party, a real party, not a small dinner, not a spontaneous get-together. They rented out a venue, sent invitations, toasted to the future. And I wasn't even a thought. The next morning I called my mom again. I saw pictures, I said flatly. She sighed. "Oh, sweetheart. It was just a little family dinner. Nothing formal. We didn't want you flying out just for that. It wasn't worth the trip." But 70 people had made the trip. Extended cousins, friends from college, childhood neighbors, everyone but me. I didn't argue. There's no winning a fight with someone who's already decided the truth isn't what happened, it's what they say happened. That night I sat on my fire escape with a glass of wine, watching the city lights blur through tired eyes. And for the first time I asked myself the question I didn't want to answer. Why didn't they want me there? I called Mom the next day, not because I expected a straight answer, but because I needed to hear her say it out loud. "Eli," she began the moment she picked up. "Don't make this into something bigger than it was." I didn't have the energy to be polite. "You told me it was just a small dinner. There were 80 people there, Mom." Silence. Then, as if reading from a pre-written script, she replied, "It was more last minute than we expected. You know how things come together fast. We didn't want to pressure you." "Pressure me? I would have been there in a heartbeat. We figured it'd be too expensive. You're busy. Claire's got her photography shoots. It just didn't make sense to drag you across the country for one night." I wanted to scream, but I didn't, because screaming meant I still believed they didn't know what they were doing. And by now I wasn't so sure. Claire sat next to me, listening. She didn't say anything until I hung up. "They're lying to you," she said simply. "You know that, right?" I nodded. Not because I agreed, but because I finally accepted it. A few days later, I found out from an old classmate who'd attended the party, someone I hadn't spoken to since high school. She sent a picture of the seating chart, snapped because she thought it was cute and rustic. My name wasn't there. Not scratched out, not miswritten, just never included. I stared at that photo for a long time. The handwriting was Isla's. I knew her calligraphy style from old birthday cards. Each guest had a handwritten name tag, a personal touch thoughtfully placed. Except me. That night I sat with Claire in silence, the kind that doesn't need to be filled. She wrapped her arms around me, grounding me as I felt my insides fracture. I hadn't cried, but I wasn't sure why. Maybe it was too deep for tears. Maybe betrayal had its own quieter kind of pain. "It's okay to feel betrayed," she whispered. "Because you were." Betrayal. That was the word I had been avoiding. Because betrayal means someone chose to hurt you. Betrayal means it wasn't an accident. It wasn't an oversight. It was intentional. And suddenly the sadness began to twist, harden. It became something else entirely. Resentment. I started seeing everything differently. I replayed conversations in my head, dissected pauses in text messages. I noticed the way Theo stopped asking about my life months before the announcement. I remembered how Mom brushed off my questions, how Dad never once reached out directly. I was beginning to suspect this wasn't Theo's decision alone. No one had fought for me. No one had spoken up. Claire tried to help me make sense of it. Maybe they thought you wouldn't fit in, she offered. Maybe they didn't want anything to feel uncomfortable. Since when did my presence become uncomfortable, I asked. She didn't have an answer. Over the following week, I heard from 2 more relatives, both older cousins. One messaged me to say, "Sorry you couldn't make it. Everyone missed you." The other posted a group photo captioned, "Whole family together to celebrate love." I zoomed in, scanning faces. Whole family, except me. I didn't correct them. What would be the point? Telling them I wasn't invited would sound bitter, petty. The outsider always sounds like the troublemaker. I kept going through the motions, designing for clients, grocery runs, editing photos Claire needed help with. But something had shifted inside me, a deep ache that made everything feel unreal, as if my own history had been rewritten and I was now a footnote in a story I once helped write. That was the first night I didn't respond when they texted. A simple group message. Family Zoom Sunday night, be there, but I wasn't. I didn't say no, I just didn't answer. And it wouldn't be the last time I chose silence. A week passed. Then 2. And I still hadn't heard from Theo, not a call, not a message. The silence between us had thickened into something palpable, something you could choke on if you weren't careful. I finally gave in. One rainy Thursday evening, I called him. No answer. I texted, "Hey, can we talk?" Nothing. 2 days later, I tried again. Still nothing. Claire encouraged me to try one last time, so I sent the kind of message that doesn't dance around the truth, "Theo. I feel like I've been deliberately excluded from your life. I wasn't invited to your engagement party, and no one has explained why. I need to know, was this intentional?" I watched the message go from sent to delivered to read, and then nothing. No reply, no typing bubbles, no excuse, just that piercing digital silence that feels worse than 1,000 screaming voices. It was a confirmation without words. I wanted to believe maybe his phone died, maybe he didn't know how to respond, but deep down I knew he'd chosen not to. Days bled into each other and not a single word came from my family. Not Theo, not Mom, not even a forwarded meme from Dad, which used to be his way of saying, "I'm still thinking of you." I scrolled through social media like a ghost haunting the halls of a house I no longer lived in. More photos from the engagement party surfaced. Theo and Isla laughing over champagne. My sister posing with the cousins I hadn't seen in years. Smiles stretched wide, arms locked together, captions like "a night to remember" or "so grateful to witness their love." Not one of them said my name. I was no longer part of the story, not even as a footnote. I'd been edited out like a bad sentence. Claire sat with me through most of those days. She brought over food, watched dumb sitcoms with me, held my hand when I didn't even realize I needed her to. But one night, while we were sitting on the couch and the credits of a show rolled by unnoticed, she asked me quietly, "What are you hoping they'll say?" I didn't answer right away because I didn't know. Maybe I wanted Theo to call and say it was a mistake, I panicked, I thought you'd judge us, or maybe Isla felt awkward, but I regret it. Maybe I wanted Mom to say I should have fought for you. Maybe I just wanted someone to acknowledge that I'd been hurt. But no one did, and in the silence something inside me shifted. I realized this wasn't just about the engagement party anymore. It wasn't even about the wedding. It was about being slowly, methodically erased by the people who were supposed to know me best. The people who helped build my identity had decided I didn't belong in theirs. I stopped checking my phone, stopped refreshing texts. I gave myself permission to stop hoping. One morning I opened my messages to delete old threads and saw something that nearly made me laugh. A group chat notification. Wedding planning updates. I was still technically in the group, but I hadn't been tagged once. The message chain was full of hotel blocks, dress codes, RSVP links, excitement, and emojis. I scrolled all the way up. The last time I had sent a message in that chat was 7 months ago. No one had responded. I hovered over the chat, thumb trembling slightly. Then I hit leave conversation. And just like that, I was out officially, visibly, digitally gone. Claire walked into the room as I set my phone down. Did something happen? I nodded. I stopped waiting. She sat beside me. You okay? I thought for a moment, then said, I think I will be. A month after I left the wedding group chat, an envelope arrived. My name. No return address, just crisp ivory cardstock and my future as an afterthought inside. It was Theo and Isla's wedding invitation. No personal note, no call or message leading up to it. Just the formal lines, you are cordially invited. In elegant serif font, followed by a date I already knew from social media. No RSVP card, just a link. No mention of Claire. I flipped the card over, half hoping there'd be a sticky note tucked behind it, some hint that I mattered. There wasn't. Claire noticed right away. Did I get one too? I held up the envelope. No +1. She stared at me. You've been dating me for over 1.5 years. I gave her a small, tired shrug. Guess that doesn't count. And then came the roster. My sister texted our group chat, the one for siblings only, to say she'd been asked to be a bridesmaid. Our youngest brother too, groomsman. They shared emojis and jokes about what they'd wear. Not once did anyone ask me if I'd be standing beside Theo. Because I wouldn't be. I wasn't surprised, not anymore. I'd learned to lower the bar of expectation so far it might as well be buried underground. But that didn't mean it didn't sting. I told Claire, I think I'm just an obligation at this point, a checkbox. They invited me because not inviting your twin brother would look bad, not because they wanted me there. She looked at me, her eyes quiet but unwavering. Sometimes the absence of a place is more intentional than it looks. They didn't forget you. They made room for everyone but you. That's not a mistake, Eli. That's a message I was finally starting to hear. I logged into the RSVP site out of curiosity. My name was there, pre-entered, locked in. No guest, no edit option. I hovered over the accept with regret button. Then I closed the tab. A week before the wedding, I still hadn't replied. That's when the text started rolling in. From Mom, have you RSVP'd yet? We need to confirm seating. From my sister. You're coming, right? We're all getting ready together Friday night. It'll be fun. From Theo, still nothing. And I realized something. They didn't want me there. But they didn't want to be seen not wanting me there. So they gave me the bare minimum. A formal invite. No speech. No suit. No stage. Just a seat. Somewhere in the back, maybe. A clean line on the guest list. A formality. A silencing strategy. I told Claire I think going would be worse than not going. She didn't argue. She just said, then don't. The night before the wedding, I stayed home. We ordered pizza, watched old movies, and I tried to pretend it was just another weekend. But under the surface, everything burned. The morning of the ceremony, my phone buzzed non-stop. Texts, missed calls, messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Where are you? Is your flight delayed? Everyone's seated. Are you almost here? I didn't answer. The ceremony started. The messages stopped. Then 20 minutes later, they resumed. I finally picked up when Mom called. Her voice was frantic. "Where the hell are you, Eli?" I took a breath. "In Portland, where you all seem to prefer me." She sputtered. "This is your brother's wedding." "How could you do this?" I replied calmly. "It's just a party. No big deal, right?" She went quiet, for the first time in months, truly speechless. I added, "Tell everyone I said hi." Then I hung up, and for the first time in this whole twisted saga, I felt something close to peace. I hadn't lost a seat at the wedding. I'd finally realized it was never mine to begin with. The wedding was over. Photos flooded in across social media like a tidal wave I'd been bracing for. Theo and Isla looked radiant. The venue was picturesque. Everyone I grew up with smiled like it had been the most natural, joyous day in the world. Except me. I wasn't even a whisper in the digital album. I told myself it was done. I'd made my choice. Let it go. But some part of me couldn't. Not yet. Claire found me one afternoon staring at my phone, scrolling through a wedding vendor forum. "Are you torturing yourself?" she asked gently. "I'm following a thread," I muttered. "Just curious." It started with something petty. A random post about wedding stationery from a printing company based in Scottsdale near where the wedding took place. One of the employees had posted behind-the-scenes shots of custom calligraphy menus, escort card signage. Then I saw it my family's surname on a guest list board. I zoomed in, squinted. There were names crossed out. Changed. One was mine, but something was off. The ink over mine looked different, newer, like it had been added later. I called the print shop, pretending to be someone helping with post-event documentation. I asked if they had the original print file for the Bennett-Isla wedding. To my surprise, the clerk was chatty. "Oh yeah, there were a few last-minute changes. One name was handwritten in, we didn't get it in time to print it with the rest." My stomach turned. "Do you remember which name that was?" He paused. I think it was Eli something. They had us add it manually. Kinda weird, honestly, since everything else was pre-approved weeks ago." I hung up. Claire sat beside me as I stared blankly at the floor. "They added me last minute," I said hollow. "To cover themselves," she whispered. "Optics, not intention." A wave of nausea swept over me. It wasn't a mistake, it was strategy. They hadn't forgotten, they hadn't been disorganized, they had made a choice. And I had been part of a cleanup effort. Later that night, Claire confessed something else. "Eli, I didn't want to tell you before, but Isla told me something once. At Thanksgiving, when you were in the kitchen." I turned to her. She looked like she'd been holding it in for months. "She said you made things feel complicated, that you're intense and oversensitive. And she didn't think you being around would be good for their day." I didn't speak, couldn't. My throat locked up. She also said, Claire continued softly, that she never liked me. That you being with me was proof you were choosing distance. Whatever that meant. Suddenly everything clicked. The vanishing calls, the awkward holidays, the missing invitation. It hadn't just been Theo, it was Isla, and it was Mom, and no one stopped it. I picked up my phone one last time. I texted Theo. "I need to hear from you. Not the version of you that's been edited for the audience. Not the brother who shrinks into silence when things get messy, just you. The real you, for once. Please." He read it, immediately. Then nothing, not a single word. The silence now felt different, not empty but heavy with meaning. Not accidental, chosen, and I realized something even worse than being excluded. I had been managed, Claire touched my hand gently. You can stop waiting for the version of him who used to protect you. He's not coming. I nodded slowly. My chest ached. But somewhere deep beneath the pain, I knew she was right. It was time to stop waiting for a door that had already been locked from the other side. And finally I stood up. The morning of the wedding, Portland was drenched in fog. It was the kind of thick, soupy gray that wrapped around buildings like secrets too heavy to be spoken aloud. Claire made coffee in silence while I sat on the couch, phone in hand. It had been buzzing all morning. Messages from cousins, missed calls from my mother, group chat notifications lighting up one after another. They all assumed I was on my way. Flight delayed. Just checking in, are you landing soon? Everyone's asking for you. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't need to. They didn't want me there. They wanted the idea of me there. The placeholder. The box checked. Claire came over, sat beside me, handed me a cup. You don't have to read them, she said softly. I looked at her. I'm not. She studied my face for a moment, then asked, do you want to forgive them? It wasn't an accusation, not a challenge, just an honest question. I thought about it, really thought about it. Then I said they never invited me, not the real me. They invited the version of me they thought was safe, quiet, accepting, invisible. Claire didn't say anything right away. She reached for my hand instead, and in the silence I felt something shift. I wasn't angry, not anymore. I was resolved. I imagined the ceremony happening without me. The vows, the applause, my mother pretending I was just running late. My brother avoiding eye contact with the empty chair. Maybe it was poetic. Maybe it was just sad. But either way, it was exactly as it should be. I had been erased so thoroughly, so cleanly, that showing up now would have felt like crashing a party I never belonged to. So I stayed in Portland. We walked to a local cafe. We talked about nothing and everything. We spent the day like it was any other Saturday, not the one that should have been sacred. And that night, when the phone buzzed again, my mother calling probably from the reception hall, I let it ring. I didn't owe them anything. My absence wasn't an accident. It was the only honest thing left I could give them. A reminder that I was no longer playing the part they wrote for me. I was done being edited. I was done waiting to be seen. I had taken myself out of the story, and that finally was my choice. I didn't attend the wedding, but I still sent a gift. Not something off the registry, not a blender or monogrammed towels. I sent something far more deliberate. Something only meant for one person, my brother. A letter. Handwritten, folded, sealed in a plain white envelope, tucked carefully inside a gift box with no return address. I imagined someone at the reception placed it on the gift table without thinking. Among the shiny wrapping paper and cellophane baskets, my little box wouldn't stand out. But if Theo opened it, if he read it, then maybe for once he'd hear me. The letter wasn't angry. There was no venom in the ink, just a quiet, cutting sadness. Dear Theo, I used to think we were unbreakable, that twinhood meant forever, that no matter where life took us, we'd find our way back to each other. But somewhere along the way, I stopped recognizing the version of you that looked back at me. Maybe you stopped recognizing me too. You didn't tell me about the party. You didn't tell me I wasn't welcome. You just let the silence speak for you. I needed you to say it, even if it hurt, even if it cracked everything open. I would have preferred the pain of honesty to the emptiness of being quietly erased. I kept asking myself why, what I did, what changed. But maybe it was never about me. Maybe it was always about who you needed to be in order to stand at the altar clean and uncomplicated. But I'm not a complication. I'm your brother. I've always just wanted the truth. You didn't owe me a place in your wedding, but I deserved to know I'd been written out. So I'm writing this instead, not to blame you, not to guilt you, just to name what no one else will say out loud. Sometimes family isn't where you come from, it's where you're invited to return. And I wasn't invited. I hope the life you're building is honest. I hope it's brave. And I hope one day when you look back on this moment, you remember the brother who wanted to stand by your side and wasn't allowed to. Not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Take care of yourself. And if you ever decide to look for me again, I'll be where I've always been, unchanged, but no longer waiting. Ilature. I never heard back. Not a thank you. Not an acknowledgement. Not a single word. But writing that letter was the closest thing to closure I would ever get. It wasn't about reopening the door. It was about understanding that it had been locked from the inside. And I wasn't the one who turned the key. A week after the wedding, news started to ripple through the family chats. Not officially, not from Mom or Dad, but from whispers. Isla and Theo had postponed their honeymoon. No explanation, just postponed. Claire heard it from one of her co-workers who followed Isla's cousin on Instagram. I heard it from my youngest brother who texted, "Weird, they're still in town, something happened." I didn't respond, I didn't care, or at least that's what I told myself. Then late one night I got the email from Theo's subject line. "If you read one thing from me, let it be this." I clicked before I could stop myself. It wasn't long, just a few paragraphs, no attachment, no fancy formatting, just words. "Eli, I read your letter. I read it 3 times. You were right about everything. I don't know how to explain why I let it all happen. I don't even fully understand it myself. Maybe I was afraid of what your presence would reveal about me, about us. Maybe Isla didn't like how raw things got when you were around. Maybe Mom thought keeping the peace meant keeping you quiet. But you were the only one who ever really saw me. Not the polished version. Not the role, not the groom or the son or the success story, just me. And I pushed that away. I buried it. I let other people rewrite what family meant for us. I'm not asking for anything. Not forgiveness, not a response. I just needed you to know I saw you. I see you now. And I wish I'd said it sooner, Theo. I read it, and then I closed it. No reply. There was nothing left to say. Some things don't need an echo to be heard. Some endings arrive not with a crash, but with the silence that follows when the last word has finally been spoken. It was late spring when Claire and I packed up the car and drove out of Portland, not in a blaze of rage or a flurry of escape, but with a quiet sense of direction. We didn't know exactly where we were going, just east. The long roads of America opened before us like pages waiting to be written on. Every mile we drove felt like a shedding of resentment, of expectations, of roles I never asked to play. In the mornings, Claire picked the music. In the evenings, I read aloud from dog-eared books while she drove. We stopped in towns we couldn't pronounce and hiked trails that had no signal. We ate too many gas station snacks and slept in motels that smelled like every family vacation we'd ever imagined. And somewhere between Wyoming and Nebraska, I felt it. Peace. Not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that comes from no longer needing to remember every ache in order to validate its existence. Claire called it our reset year. I called it finding silence that didn't sting. One afternoon, while she was napping in the passenger seat, I pulled over at a small roadside gift shop. Rows of postcards lined a rotating rack. I found one with a watercolor cactus against a soft Arizona sunset. It felt right. I bought it, took a seat on the hood of the car, and wrote, "To whom it once concerned, when we were little, we used to fight over the best seat in the back of the car. You always wanted the left window. I liked the right." Funny, isn't it? How many battles we fought over inches of space, not realizing that one day we'd be oceans apart in silence. I used to think I needed to reclaim that seat, to be seen again in the place I was pushed from. But I don't, because I've found a new seat, one that doesn't require permission, one that doesn't ask me to shrink, one where I don't have to apologize just to exist. I hope wherever you are, you're finding your own. Be well. Eli Tartiet. I mailed it without a return address. We drove on, through Colorado into the soft sprawl of Kansas until we found a cabin on the edge of a lake, so still it felt like time paused just for us. We stayed. Weeks turned into months, the seasons shifted, and for the first time in years I stopped waiting for a message, a phone call, an apology that never needed to arrive. I had always thought closure looked like a door slamming shut. But it wasn't. It looked like a window cracked just enough to let in the breeze. I hadn't reclaimed the old seat. I'd built a new one, and it fit me perfectly.